BMW X3M and the Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio are two hot little SUVs that I've been shopping for a while. I've driven both of these and I'm definitely come to a conclusion which one of these vehicles is right for me. They both have 6-cylinder engines, but they both accomplish it in a very different way. I want to break this down, share the ins and the outs, reliability, the depreciation, the ownership costs, and the type of driver that would actually prioritize owning each or one of these vehicles. Let's get into it now. So first to note, unfortunately, both of these vehicles are gone now. You can no longer find them in 2026. But there's good news because they both depreciate pretty sturdily, and neither of them were cheap when they were brand new. As a matter of fact, the BMW ranged from about $75,000 to about $84,000 new sticker price, and the Alfa Romeo was about $86,000. The Alfa Romeo actually depreciates slightly harder, so now in 26 you can find one of these vehicles for almost the same price. They both have similar number of cylinders, and I've always been a fan of a lot of the BMW hot inline six engines, you know, like from the M3s, the M4s, and a 3-liter twin-turbo inline 6-cylinder engine like either the S55 or even now the S58. Either way are great engines. Compare that with what they're doing in Alfa Romeo land, which is a 2.9-liter twin-turbo V6 engine, and they both produce almost the same amount of power. BMW puts down about 503 horsepower, while the Alfa pops out about 505 horsepower with a slight improvement there. Now, BMW has the edge in torque with 479 pound-feet of torque, and the Alfa is a 443, and obviously you're going to feel that in the punch. That's the twist. That's ultimately that little edge, that little jump start you get. The BMW has a little bit more of that punch, but that being said, the Alfa has more of a race-type engine, sort of a Ferrari-derived, which only enthusiasts can really understand. Somebody looking for great fuel economy or frivolous driving or a simple, easy, reliable mode of transportation will never relate to these vehicles. These are for the true driver enthusiasts like me and many of you. Now, the beauty is they both carry the absolute spectacular ZF 8-speed automatic transmission, which is truly one of my favorites. I mean, ultimately, rowing the gears is my favorite. Next to that would be aggressive dual-clutch gearbox like Porsche's PDK or Ferrari's F1 system. Next to that, of course, is the ZF 8-speed. Definitely the best of the slush box of the automatic torque converter type trannies. There's no other gearbox on the market right now that's as good, as predictable to use, and as reliable as the ZF 8-speed. And as expected, their 0 to 16 quarter-mile times are almost identical, with about a 12-second flat for both the X3M and the Alfa Romeo. 0 to 60 comes in a very scant 3.6 for the Alfa and about a 3.7 seconds for the BMW X3M. Almost identical. Remember way back in the late 80s, that little car called the Ferrari F40? Yeah, just a little bit of a legend these days. I love this thing. Absolutely one of the best supercars ever and really carved the way in the path for Ferrari going forward. It was also one of those cars that Enzo, that was his Sayonara type car, and it was definitely a legend then and is still a legend today. 0 to 60 came up in about 3.5 seconds for that F40. Well, these SUVs that are practical, throw your kids in the back, the luggage for the trip to the lake on the weekend, or even just drive it around in snowy and slushy weather and have 0 to 60 times that are almost identical with the old Ferrari F40. Now, while some people consider the fact that BMW depreciates slightly slower, and we'll get to that in a moment, the fact is it uses a little more fuel. So some of those offset values and prices on depreciation are beat, of course, by the improved fuel economy that you're getting with the Alfa, because the BMW actually gets about 15 to 20 miles per gallon, whereas the Alfa gets about 17 to 23 miles per gallon, both city and highway. And the overall driving character of these vehicles is actually quite different. Sure, on paper, 0 to 60 quarter mile is almost the same, but they both deliver a different driving experience. The BMW is tough, planted, aggressive, extremely fast, like dropping a hammer. Whereas on the Alfa, slightly less predictable, equally quick, but a little bit more squirrely, and honestly, more of an enthusiast driving perspective. Definitely a more driver-centric experience with the Alfa Romeo. Even the 0 to 60 and everything's the same, what you're gonna find is the Alfa Romeo, it definitely gets you more excited. The eyebrows raise and you get a little bit more, tingly in the pants, if you will. People looking for an exciting driving experience, you're going to get it both ways. The Alfa is going to do it in a way that's a little bit more verve, a little more zest, and a little bit maybe slightly unpredictable. The dealer network is part of the conversation. BMW having about 350 plus networks across the United States, the Alfa Romeo brand only has about 125 and counting dealership networks across the US. Now, while there's dealers in almost every major city, say 1 million and plus, the fact is there are less dealers. Maybe you go to a dealer, you don't like the dealer in your city, you're going to have to travel. When we're talking about Alfa Romeo, BMWs, there's usually 2 to 3 dealers in the same city, and sometimes even in slightly slightly smaller cities. So if servicing is your concern, and if you live in a small town, Alfa Romeo is going to be a bit more of a challenge. BMW, there's probably a little bit more aftermarket support as well. So if you're browsing some of the spaces, you're looking online and you're thinking, you know what, I'm going to do some of this work myself. Like, I'm good with servicing a lot of my own cars, and I'm okay in jacking it up and fixing and replacing parts. But those people that aren't necessarily on the same wavelength, you definitely have to consider the fact that one has certainly more of a network outreach than the other one. Depreciation's always been my best friend. I've only ever purchased one brand new car, and it was the Ferrari. But other than that, every single car I've bought throughout my lifetime has been used, because I could appreciate the fact I get a 2 or 3 year old slightly used luxury vehicle, low mileage, well kept, but I save 40, 50, 60% of its original value, and I can get almost a brand new car. I love that. See, where the Alfa Romeo was slightly more money brand new, the BMW in 5 years is going to lose somewhere between 50 to 55% of its original value. If we're talking about an $80,000 X3M, 5 years later, you'll find them for about 40 grand. The Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio, that's a mouthful. It's closer to 60 to 65% depreciation. So now if we're looking at a 2 or 3 year old Alfa Romeo versus a 2 to 3 year old BMW X3M, you're going to find them very similarly priced, both in and around that $40,000 price tag. But what about service costs? I mean, again, I do a lot of my own servicing, but a lot of people don't. They just want to take their car down once a year, get it oil serviced, get the filters and the fluids changed, get it looked over. You like to drive your car down to the dealership. The BMW is going to save you a few dollars there, because each year on average, it's only going to cost you between $1,200 and $1,800 to service your BMW X3M. But in the Alfa Romeo side, you're going to see about $1,500 to $2,500 annual service bill. Yeah, the parts are more expensive, Ferrari derived. There's the Ferrari tax, so to speak, that sort of ties in with these vehicles. Now, for me, it's value add. For a vehicle that brings extra verve and zest and a little bit of that uniqueness, sometimes it's worth the cost of admission. Let's just say, hypothetically, you want to keep your car for 10 years. You're going to expect $12,000 to $18,000 in a 10-year time frame of actual service costs. Counter that with depreciation. Now you're into that 30, 40, maybe $50,000 of cost to own that vehicle in a 10-year time frame. And the Alfa in 10 years, you might spend closer to $15,000 to $22,000 in service costs. Again, counter that with another $40,000 lost. You're now into that $50,000 to $60,000 lost in 10 years. But how much does your excitement, how much does your own mental health, how much does your passion for the driving experience cost? These are all experiences. These are not A to B transportation devices. I mean, if you want A to B, you can buy a Toyota Corolla, but really, who wants vanilla yogurt when you can have something with spice? It's not just maintenance costs, but these unexpected repairs. We know BMW and the X3M, of course, they've had their share of the oil filter housing issues, of course, leaks and contamination, of course, issues with that, the crank pulley and the crank hub potentially as well. But turbocharger costs for replacement doesn't come cheap. A failure could run you anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000. High pressure fuel system, $2,000 to $4,000. Those are not cheap devices. And the classic BMW cooling system woes that might cost you $1,500 to $3,000, whether it's a water pump, thermostat, radiator, all those snap together hoses, those are classic failures. And look at 50, 60, 70,000 miles, that's when you're going to start replacing the odd fitting, or maybe your thermostat goes. That's when typical BMW coolant leak issues start to arise. But the Alfa Romeo, on the other hand, yeah, there are some very high spike failures, but generally not quite as annoying as a lot of the BMW failures, believe it or not. $8,000 to $12,000 for carbon ceramic brakes, not a cheap fix. I know a guy who had a Ferrari 458 Italia. He drove it too hard on the track, carved into the discs themselves, and it ended up costing him $10,000 Canadian for each corner for the rotors and another $5 grand for the pads. It was a $55,000 brake job for his Ferrari 458. Now, these aren't Ferraris, but that being said, there is certainly an association and affiliation that's going to tie that together. So carbon ceramic, it doesn't matter an Alfa, a Porsche, a Ferrari, it's going to cost you a lot of money to replace them. Maybe $1,000 to $3,000 for your classic infotainment failures, glitches, hiccups. That's not uncommon. I mean, we've seen some of the rhetoric out there. I personally, from my experience, have seen that some of these glitches, though, are actually due to vehicles like this, because the Alphas a lot of times spend a lot of time sitting. People don't daily drive them as often, so the batteries die. They deteriorate, and it's a low battery voltage that sometimes triggers some of these weird faults and gremlins and reactions, where most people driving BMWs and Benzes tend to daily those. So a lot of these electrical failures actually come to a low battery. But the Alfa, of course, has had a few shares here or there with engine issues catastrophically failing, or of course even turbochargers issues. And some of those average expenses might be in that $5,000 to $10,000 range. Generally speaking, those are few and far between. Both of these vehicles are actually relatively durable. On the mechanical perspective, the engine and the gearbox both do it quite well. Reliability is an important factor. You don't want to have to be pulling up to your favorite restaurant with your favorite person sitting next to you, go into the restaurant, eat an hour later, and the car won't start. Yeah, that's embarrassing, getting your hot rod, your hot SUV on the back of a tow truck as it sails away and you're standing there waiting for an Uber to take you home. Yeah, that's embarrassing. Been there, done that. I know. Because the BMW X3M, actually, according to Edmunds, gives it an average level of reliability and rates it about a 3.0 out of 5. JD Power rates the BMW at 74 out of 100, which is slightly above average. And Consumer Reports ranks it at average. The Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio, on the other hand, gets a little bit of a different set of reliability ratings. For example, Consumer Reports ranks them slightly below average. RepairPal says they probably rank slightly lower than even BMW. And JD Power puts them slightly below the industry average for that particular segment. But remember, this is no CR-V. This is no RAV4. These are sports cars. These are basically a Ferrari light. If you want to drive an absolute exciting and thrilling SUV, you've come to the right place. These are two of those very best, most exciting SUVs on the market. Now, recalls are quite minimal. The BMW's got one outstanding, and the Alfa Romeo has one that's just really not that consequential. Fuel system was an issue, not so prevalent here in later models, of course, in the auto-electrical gremlin. The BMW X3M has a superior technical level. The iDrive, M-Drive systems are definitely far superior, not just to Alfa, but basically the entire industry. The straight line performance is nothing short of spectacular. You drive one of these, plant the foot, hold on tight, because this thing is gone. And with all four wheels ripping at the asphalt, it's actually terrifying how quick these vehicles are off the line. I love it. This is definitely the kind of vehicle that lights my fire. I've driven these, and really there's very little like it out there. The drawback with the BMW is they really do have pricey options. Once you start checking all the boxes and start adding the extra features, you're going to start seeing the price tag rise very quickly. It also has a very stiff drive and a very stiff ride. And for those people that don't like that and they come out of their drive and they kind of their back's aching, well, this BMW, you're going to feel it. It's going to hurt after a period of time. And another drawback with the X3M is it has a less emotional driving experience. It's fast AF in a straight line. It'll go. It grips hard around the corners. Like, it literally does everything. But for some reason, the sound isn't quite the same. The drama isn't quite the same. And it does everything perfectly, like a 911 Turbo. You can't fault it. It's perfect. But try and compare that to a Ferrari that gets a little tail happy, a little exciting, rev happy. The engine sounds different. That thrill is a little bit less in the BMW. Then the Alfa Romeo, there's some pros and cons there too. It's got the best handling in its class, bar none. It definitely handles, the dynamics feel more exotic by nature. It feels like driving a Ferrari, but you've got those seats for three back there and that trunk space, so you're hauling your kids around, taking them to school, going to work, driving through the slush, but yet on the back road on the way home, you're having some fun, ripping this through the twisties and watch that tail end get a little bit squirrely on you. It also has more of an exotic feel, the sound, the engine has a character. Now, while the X3M has a great sound, it's very actually monotone. I've driven a lot of these BMWs, and they can roar and they make a good sound, but they sort of sound like, it's a very consistent monotone drone sound to them, whereas the 2.9 V6 that you're finding in the Alfa, kind of very screamy and howly, and something that's more in line with an exotic car. Of course, the drawbacks on the Alfa Romeo, weaker infotainment, electronic tech inside isn't quite as flashy, but generally the leather looks nice and the interior is nicely styled. The tech is a little light. They really focus more on the driving experience rather than pushing buttons and swiping and sliding and looking at the flashy graphics. If that's your forte, the BMW is going to be more your game. If pure driving experience and excitement and sound and kind of squirreliness is your game, well, the Alfa might have you covered. So what kind of driver are you? A daily drivable rocket ship SUV that's easy to use, starts reliably every time, there's no glitches, no hiccups. You like all that great technology. You like the latest big screens and the flashy infotainment systems and the latest updates. You like all of that style and the great flashy lights inside on the interior. You want a dealership network and a product that is predictable, just doesn't create as much drama in your life. Well, then you're probably going to buy a BMW X3M. But if you're a driver that prefers to buy that Ferrari versus the Porsche, then you're probably similar here in driving a vehicle that brings out emotion. You're okay with quirks because it creates a great driving experience. And maybe you're also the driver that it prioritizes the driving dynamics, the excitement, the sound, the feel, and all of that driving feel above and beyond the practical nonsense and the boredom of starting a car and just driving in a straight line for thousands of miles. You like taking the twisties. You like taking the long way home. You like taking that second, third look back when you're walking away from your vehicle. Then the Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio is your answer. Many people comment that the Quadrifoglio, both in the Stelvio and the Giulia, outperform a lot of their competition. There's no joke. It's not by accident. I've seen Top Gear and, of course, Jeremy Clarkson. They had nothing but positive things to say. And so do I. I love the Alfa Romeo Giulia and Stelvio Quadrifoglio. And for me, because I love that driving experience and something that just lights up my day, I would probably drive the Alfa Romeo. If you're wondering why used BMW is so cheap, right there, and why are Alfa Romeos so cheap on the used car market, right there, that's going to give you all of the insight and background to what I'm just talking about here. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon, everybody. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.